Hey, we are at the end of our series entitled Asking for a Friend, and today we're going to pick up our last question before we jump into UFOs on Sunday. I'm glad you're here for it on today's 7 at 7. Well, this is a Friday. We've had a great week, talked about a lot of stuff over the last 5 weeks. And today, one of the questions that came that we didn't really decide to choose to be a part of our sermon series surrounded the media that we consume, the kinds of things that we listen to and watch and take into our brains. And as a Christian, how do we decide what kind of things we should be putting into our minds and the kind of things that we ought to provide to our kids? And I've thought about this through the years, using an illustration about the kind of things that we physically consume, the kind of things we put into our mouths. The first thing that we would probably recognize, maybe it's the easiest thing to get our heads around, is that we wouldn't allow our children to eat rat poison. That is clearly bad parenting if you let your kids eat rat poison. And so I think that holds pretty true for us in the kind of things we put into our minds. There are things that are out there that are clearly outside of what God intends for us to consume. Things that are full of violence or pornography or the objectification of people, or there's things out there that clearly are outside of what God intends. For my part, I, a long time ago, quit watching horror movies. I just don't watch them because they often glorify death and they sort of point to something that I know isn't particularly healthy for me or for my dreams or for my mind. Our world is enough filled up with things that are grotesque and gruesome and violent that I don't need any more of that in my life. And so for me, that's rat poison. There's other things that are out there that fall into this category too. It wouldn't take long for you to make a list. Those rat poisonous kinds of things aren't good for your kids. They aren't good for you either. So avoid those altogether. And then there's some things that fall into a category that I might categorize as a little more neutral. I happen to love black cherry Jello, one of my favorite. Put a little Cool Whip in that. Oh, man, delightful. Now, black cherry Jello doesn't really have any nutritional value at all. In fact, maybe that sugar in there isn't particularly great for you to begin with. But at least we might say that it is one of the more neutral things you can eat. And I think once in a while having a little black cherry Jello is okay for you. But if you made that the constant diet of your life, well, what does that do to your brain and to your body? It probably means that you aren't getting some things that you need to be getting at the very least. And what's true sort of in the physical world, I think is also true in the material world. I think it's okay for there to be some things in our life that are just enjoyable and they are kind of neutral. They're not necessarily preaching any great value, but they're not necessarily saying anything that's necessarily negative or hurtful either. They're just enjoyment. And there's lots of things in the life that God intends for us to enjoy, and it's okay that we do. But a constant diet of that, too much of that, isn't healthy for us. And there's a lot of things in social media that kind of fall into this black cherry Jello space, isn't there? I mean, it's not necessarily bad, although there's clearly a lot of bad things that come through social media or can to us. They don't call it doom scrolling for no reason. But it's true that there's some stuff that's just neutral, but too much of that isn't healthy for us. The third thing is what I might say is sort of like a balanced plate. You've got a nice bit of protein there, some chicken or steak or salmon. You've got some veggies going on. There's a carb that's available to you. I mean, there's a lot about it that's good for your body. It's balanced. It puts the nutrients into your body that your body needs. None of us would be healthy if we didn't take time to eat. And if we eat the right things, we know it's better for us physically. Well, the same thing is true for us when it comes to spiritual matters. We all need things in our life that are good for us to eat. In the book of Philippians, Paul's talking about this, that 4th chapter, and he says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true and noble, whatever is pure and lovely, whatever is admirable, anything is excellent or praiseworthy, these are the kinds of things that you ought to think about. And that's good advice. He's saying, we have a choice about what we turn our attention to and what we put our minds to and what we think about. And in a world where we need to be joyful and hopeful and positive and energized for daily life in order to love the people around us that we care about, the last thing we need is a mind that is full of negativity and sin and the things that are dark and oppressive in this world. So Paul says, think about things that are good and noble and admirable. And how do we think about those things? Well, we choose to think about them. We also choose to put those kinds of things in front of our eyes. We read things, we listen to things, we make time for media consumption that's positive and that helps us and encourages us and puts us in the right frame of mind. Today, I hope you'll be the kind of person that is wise about what you consume. There's a place in your life for a little black cherry Jello from time to time, but most of what we consume ought to be things that are beneficial and bless us, things that are good and noble and admirable, the things that lift our minds. May God help you today as you go through a day full of media being thrown at you, that you're able to filter through and choose to put into your mind those things that are good and will help bless you and bless others around you. And I love you guys. I hope you have a great weekend. Look forward to seeing you on Sunday morning.